Obviously, George created Star Wars, but all of us had to become, in a sense, students of Star Wars. A real understanding of the history of Star Wars, that was really important. We needed to understand the rules. And once we understood that, then we could branch out.
Hi, guys.
You understand shit.
Nerdrotic.com.
Gina Carano was on the Patrick Bet David podcast. I thought it was a good refresher for what everybody kind of already knows. And Gina's still being kind of nice about it. But I think the one cool thing that came out of it is she just straight up said, Kathleen Kennedy's this cold bitch.
You know, I don't know her entire story. I don't know what made her have this wall of defense that she's had. Maybe she'll tell us all that story someday. But it was very cold.
You know, just a refresh on Kathleen Kennedy, because they were going like, wow, she's been attached to all these movies. She was married to Frank Marshall, who was friends with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. She was there to get coffee. I'm sure she probably is a good facilitator, but it is beyond any doubt now that whatever she was as a producer, she is now on her own. She is no longer and has not been surrounded by the better men, the talented men that she was surrounded, that gave her this gig, by the way. And on her own, she is the worst studio head in the history of Hollywood. And if she was a dude, she'd be fired. End of story.
I think that's 100% true, Gary, because when you look at, we don't need to rehash the profound failure that is the Star Wars sequel trilogy. When you look at that sequel trilogy, one, it has not aged well. It will not age well. And I'm looking forward to seeing The Phantom Menace in theaters because you know what? Parts of this prequel trilogy that hold up, some of the best lightsaber duels, there's some good lines of dialogue. You can't quote anything from the sequel trilogy that's worthwhile. Let's say they've aged better than the sequels.
Yeah, I won't go that far, but that's cool. People like them. That's fine. Another thing they pointed out that I thought was great is they showed the graph of Disney stock, right? And I said this at the time and got some clapback, like, this won't affect Disney. So they showed Disney stock. The highest it's ever been was the month Gina got fired. And it went downhill from there. The highest it's ever been was the month Gina got fired. And it's gone down since then. It was a massive fuck up that a lot of people noticed. The Star Wars fandom is a weird place right now. What's left of it. The normies have completely abandoned it. It's a dead fucking brand. I mean, good luck with putting your shit in the theaters. I welcome it. The Rey movie will have Marvel's numbers. It will be fucking terrible. And I welcome it. But it certainly, they had momentum back. We've gone over it a lot on this channel, so we're not going to repeat it. But they had their momentum back, and they killed it when they fired her. But Gina said herself, nobody called her. Nobody backed her. It's such old news now. We like sometimes in our sphere, we roll our eyes, but it does need to get out more because there's still people who think Gina is a transphobe and Gina was pro-Nazi. And the whole point of the interview was they destroyed her life, didn't think twice about it, slept like babies at night, and went on the company that shrunk Finn on the poster for China for The Force Awakens, that covered up Chadwick Boseman's face for China, thanked a concentration camp, the supporting a bill to sexualize kindergartners. And they're coming off like, well, this woman is just not moral enough for us. She's just, she's too problematic. And it's, you know what? You could have your views. You don't, if Pedro Pascal is calling out Trump's, what he did was way worse. And we've gone over this a million times. It's the inconsistency. They are trying to drown people out. And Disney has become this culture of fear. And that's why it's a culture of failure now. There's no way they're going to turn around. And I know they were talking about it on the podcast, like if Nelson Peltz get in there, he's going to really rock the boat. I don't think two boards.
Impossible.
No.
Impossible.
It's impossible. It's got cancer.
It's got the cancer is the activists that have embedded themselves at all levels. And as it's been described to Alan and I in all the emails that we've gotten from people and the people who've reached out to us with the D-Files is the inmates are running the asylum.
Yep.
That's what Disney is right now. The inmates. And it's at all levels. It's at the lowest levels and in particular in middle management. I've been talking to a bunch of people. They're all, the middle management is where it is, and it mainly comes from, I hate to say this, comes from white progressive women.
Yep.
Is where all of this comes from, that feel that they've got this savior complex. They got to save, they got to fight, they got to fight for everybody that isn't them. And they didn't ask for it, right? It's so ridiculous, and it's destroying the company. And the thing is that I didn't realize, that's really interesting, that the stock began to tumble at that point. It was at its highest point, because it's not Gina, it's what she represents. She represents half of the country, or at the very least, she represents thinking people, right? People who question, and that's like, to me, that's embedded as a Gen Xer. That's just embedded in my DNA, is just question everything.
Everything.
I've never trusted the government.
Yep.
I've voted in every election, including midterms. I vote in midterms. I vote. I pay attention. But wow, do I feel like I've been betrayed and I've been sold something that's not real. And Gina even says at the very beginning of the discussion, she talks about she was just not particularly political, and her family wasn't political, right? She talked about how she didn't even know if her relatives were Democrats or Republicans. It wasn't something they discussed. They were small business owners. And if you look at like Gina's career, she has, like, in entertainment, it's a freelance business. So one job leads to the next job. She's doing MMA, she's doing, movie roles. She's doing all these different things that bring in money, and probably ekes out a decent living, even though probably the least she was paid was probably from Disney. When you look at like what she was paid per episode is kind of pathetic. And by the way, she made half of that money. So 25 grand per episode, manager, agent, government, you're looking at maybe just over half is what she ended up.
Her per episode is dwarfed, and this is going to make you sad, by the hardest working streamer on the planet, Hassan Piker. What he makes in a month dwarfs that. Absolutely dwarfs that. It's not even close. But man, he works harder than Gina, obviously, getting his nuggies from his mommy. But you're right, Chris. It was like an upward trajectory. And like the last phone call she had with Disney, correct me if I'm wrong, was from Jon Favreau saying, hey, you got a show. Everything's good. Then the next thing she knows, she's fired through the media, like a couple months later.
They even made that announcement. Do you remember like Kathleen Kennedy when she did that? Like, those talks are so lame. Yeah. Let's bring up the people with the least personality and have them sell to everyone what's coming up. They announced the show. I mean, look, Kathleen Kennedy has announced more projects than have been done.
She's fired more directors than she's hired.
Yeah, it's embarrassing at this point. And as you pointed out at the top of our discussion, if she were a man, I don't believe she would be in her position at this time.
Fuck no. The guy who oversaw the live action part of Disney, who greenlit all the live action remakes of animated films, just got canned.
Too little, too late.
Oh, it's all too little, too late. This is Bob Iger is trying to preserve his legacy and his job. He doesn't give a fuck about Disney. And I guess that's where Bob and I have something in common. I don't give a fuck about Disney. I would love for Hollywood to turn around. And I think in some aspects it will. And that's what I want. Disney can fucking burn. I don't want it to turn around. I want it to be the failure that everybody points to. Because fuck any company that thanks a concentration camp and tries to like get on their soapbox and tell us how much better they are than us. Go fuck yourself.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.
Hey, if you like what we do here at Nerdrotic Daily, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you could do that with your favorite YouTuber as well, I'm sure they would appreciate it as much as I do.